way up in the mountains of northern Italy. Like the closest major city would be Milan. And Milan was a 3.5-hour drive from where the event was. So I ended up finding a special ticket where essentially they would pick up people in Milan in a bus and drive you there. So I ended up landing in Milan, Italy, probably 4 or 5 days before Crap Invaders happened. And then while I was there, I was like, you know what, let's just explore Italy. So I got like a little hotel room, and like this turns out that they call their floors pianos. So I was like on the 3rd piano of this like Italian place. Would just like go explore. I found out that they had these like little bike kiosks, and now you see like the little bike riding shares. Those are kind of getting off the ground in Milan at this point, except it was kiosk based. So you go to a kiosk, you could rent a bike, drive it to another kiosk, and then park it. So I would like leave the place, get a bike, ride it like 2 miles to another place in Milan, hook it in, and I found out that the World's Fair was taking place that year in Milan. For those who don't know what the World's Fair is, it's kind of like this big Olympic-sized like tier event where basically when a city, they figure out they're hosting it years in advance, and they start like building a massive complex just for it. And they'll usually pick a topic and have countries from all over the world come together to show what they're representing in terms of the topic. Well, the event in Milan, the topic was food. So I was like, okay, I'm going to this thing.
Yes.
So I like found a place. I was like,
sir.
oh, how much are tickets? They're like, oh, it's like $40 a day. I was like, all right, cool. I'll get tickets. I'm here in Milan for 4 days. Give me 2 of the tickets. So I went to this thing. Yeah.
You pay $40 for the ticket. Do you also have to pay for the food, or do you get a bunch of free food?
No, you have to pay for the food. That just gets you into the event.
Oh, well.
Which when you get there, it was like Disney World almost kind of. It's like you get there, and every World's Fair, or these days they call them Expo, like currently there's one going on in Dubai, Expo 2020. It's supposed to be in 2020. It's at the very tail end. It ends this March, and then the next one will be somewhere else, probably in 2 or 3 years.
Is it still called Expo 2020 even though it's 2022?
Yeah, they were supposed to do it in 2020, but COVID happened and they pushed it back a year.
Okay, so but it's actually called Expo 2020.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's cool.
When I went to it, it was like Expo 2015, 2016. But yeah, I went there, and the way they had it set up is when you got there was this giant breezeway that went through the entire event. From one end of this breezeway to the other, it was like fully covered, like awnings and stuff, but it was over a mile long from one end of this thing to the other. And as you're walking down this massive court, like this massive like awning, there's just these giant buildings on all sides, and the buildings were pavilions representing each country. And as you're walking, you just see these national flags, like, oh, here's the Czech Republic one, here's the Italy one, way down at the very end, here's the American one.
Was it hamburgers and hot dogs?
I'll get to that with the U.S.
Okay.
So, and essentially what a lot of the countries were doing is they would build these pavilions, and the pavilions would be like architectural masterpieces. Like just wasn't a random building they popped up. Like they hired like world-class architects to design these buildings. Like the one for Brazil, when you walked in probably a good 100 or 200 feet on a cargo net. Like the floor was a cargo net, and it like went up into the second floor thing. So as you're walking, you're on a cargo net walking over a rainforest, basically.
Oh my God.
And then you get to the very end of it, and there's like a little thing, and then you walk back down, and now you're walking back out of their pavilion through the rainforest with the cargo net over you, with people walking over the top of you on the cargo net.
That is awesome.
And I'm just like, what kind of place is this? This is insane. And as you're walking through, they had these little things like, oh, this is this tree from Brazil. This is this plant. This is this plant. Because some of the pavilions, they were like trying to show like, all right, topic is food. So what are we doing to help with agriculture? What are we doing to help with world hunger? Like I went to the Israeli one, and in it I found out that Israel invented the drip tape that you see. Like you go to Walmart, you see a little plastic tube running through the bed of trees. Like that was invented by Israel because it helps them save water in a desert climate. And they're like, oh, and Israel also invented cherry tomatoes because cherry tomatoes are made to not need a lot of water in desert climates. They're like, that's why if you overwater a cherry tomato, it explodes, because they were engineered to be grown in the desert.
Okay. And it's interesting to me because you didn't even know what you were getting yourself into.
No, I was just like, I'm going.
Just some random event? I bet it'll be okay. And then you get there, and it's like one of the coolest things that the world puts
There was
together.
a giant pavilion completely dedicated to coffee, and the entire pavilion, this thing was like 5 stories tall, was like made of a lattice of woodwork. To where you could see from the ground all the way through the ceiling, and it was just a lattice of like wood timbers like going in tons of different directions building this thing. And then like Ghirardelli, the chocolate maker, had an entire pavilion like, yeah, this is how we make chocolate. And I'm like, cool, I'm gonna go check that out. And then you like go to the Thailand pavilion, and like at one point they're like shooting holograms of dragons into the room showing you their culture. And then you go to another room that's the entire room, like ceiling, floor, walls, everything is like coated in mirrors, and it like projectors turn on. It's like you're floating in an abyss where like everything around you is moving. It's like, what is this? And then I go to the American pavilion, and they have like a nice little fountain that draws shapes as it's dripping water. And I'm like, US dragon holograms, and you have a fountain that draws shapes. What?
That's kind of a shame. But what was their food?
So the U.S. had 2 sections. The second section was called Food Truck Nation, and it was just a bunch of food trucks selling hamburgers and hot dogs.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I called it.
There was one point I was there. I also went to another pavilion for Angola. It was one of the biggest pavilions there, which is like some country in Africa, which it was like some like massive science fair going on inside of there. They had, and of course, with it being food, every pavilion had a restaurant. Like I went to the Angola pavilion and like ordered some beef ribs, like cow ribs and stuff with the bone still in. I was like, this is epic. At one point I was like, I want some gyros or kebabs, and I was like, what country might have that?
Greek.
Yeah. Well, actually I went to Turkey, and Turkey had them at their pavilion. I was like, sweet.
Pretty close, right? Like geographically, how close? I don't know my
They're pretty
geography at all,
close.
but I think okay, that's what I thought.